Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of MUN Talks, where I'm going to be today hosting Nahjae Nunes, a very dear friend of MUNers Across Borders Worlds. Nahjae, welcome. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so much, Tarek. I appreciate the invitation.
So before I go ahead and start bombing you with some of the questions that I have here, if you would, please, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Certainly. Well, firstly, greetings to all viewers and listeners. Very happy to be in the company again of Emmy winners across borders. My name is Nahjae Nunes. I am from Kingston, Jamaica. Right now, I serve as a policy advisor at the United Nations for the Permanent Mission of Jamaica to the UN, focusing on third committee issues. Third committees, of course, are social, cultural, and humanitarian issues. I'm also a student at New York University at the Center for Global Affairs, researching and learning more about global affairs, particularly with an emphasis on international relations and global futures. And my own research emphasis is about multilateralism and intergovernmental organizations. So very in keeping with what MUN does. I am also an MUN aficionado. I've been in the MUN space for longer than I care to admit. But I see the benefit that it has to, especially to young people. And I think it's something that is truly transformative and an incubator for success. And so I'm very happy to be in your company today. And yeah, I think that's just a little about me. And I'm very happy to turn it back to you for some questions.
Well, that's exactly why I didn't do the introduction, because I knew there was going to be a lot to talk about. So thanks for that impressive introduction. So I'm going to take a little bit backwards, actually, all the way to your bachelor's degree, if we may start from there. So while you were still doing your bachelor's degree, you became a youth advisor for the SDGs and 2030 agenda at an age for which some of us would still be pretty young to be involved in that kind of an advisory role, especially. Could you tell us a little bit about the experience? How was it? Did it contribute to your personal development? And take us back there if you can.
Certainly, this was around 2018. I did that for a few years, and I worked with the UN Youth Envoy. And they had some advisors essentially, and our mission was to help to guide the UN in ensuring that the youth voice was present and that youth were informed and engaged with the UN's vision for the future. And so we did a lot of work in inviting member states and encouraging them to ensure that they have some youth delegates being a part of their delegations. We also designed various campaigns ensuring that the youth voice was mainstreamed into various youth programs across the UN departments and agencies. We also designed some campaigns on a variety of issues that surround youth, young people, and juvenescence. So employment and education and diversity and equality and equity and parity being reflected, of course, in that and other things too. And it was a great experience for me. I was working with the UN before becoming a youth advisor for the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. But working in that position, it brought it for me to become full circle. Seeing exactly how young people are a part of those discussions and how they can really be incubators of change and transform their environments. And that was something I thought was really great that I didn't get in the previous experiences, because it was always about the country or UN vision, but how can we integrate the young people into that vision as well? And that's something I got very keenly from this position about the importance and centrality of young people to the world we want to see. So it really impacted me, and it's been seminal, honestly, to my development within and beyond the UN system.
And I will come to that last point of yours about involving the youth in this process of I guess, engaging with the UN and relate to the UN bodies in a few minutes. But before that, I want to kind of follow like a sort of a chronological order. So later on, then you became a policy advisor as a part of the Jamaican mission to the UN, which is when we also got to know you, luckily. Again, this was, if I'm not mistaken, while you were still pursuing your bachelor's degree, or was it right afterwards?
This was when I moved to New York.
And this is when you were moved to New York. Okay, so, and how was that experience? Because I guess at this point, you're now a part of the actual Jamaican mission. So I guess there's more, there's more involved in the whole process. So how was that experience, that latter part?
Oh, it's been amazing. It's been a journey. Of course, as I said, third committee, that's where my expertise is. So it falls under the social, cultural, and humanitarian issues. And thankfully, the youth portfolio is something that was so seamless to transition from my old position as someone in the envoy to working for social things that really encompassed a lot of the youth issues that I was already familiar with. And so in this position, of course, I'm now more so advancing and promoting the interests of my country, thankfully. And so in this position, what I really work on is a lot of issues, for example, youth, women, education, the protection of children, racial discrimination. And thankfully, a lot of these social justice and other issues that I am dealing with at the UN on behalf of my country are things that I am deeply passionate and care a lot about. And so it's truly been an amazing experience thus far. I was thankful to be a part of my team in leading the negotiations for the declaration for youth and the establishment of the youth office that has thankfully been passed by the General Assembly. I also worked on the resolution for the Summit of the Future, which is also talking about our young people and future generations and posterity and what we can do today to ensure that our needs of today aren't compromising the future generations' ability to fulfill their own needs, which is something that is truly important. And I also worked a bit on the Transforming Education Summit. This year, Jamaica also celebrated 60 years of independence, and I was very happy to lead a lot of the activities that we did in celebration of our Diamond Jubilee. And so it has just been an amazing experience. I'm very thankful to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade and to the Permanent Mission of Jamaica to the UN for affording me this opportunity. And it has been something that I will, or continues to be something that I will take with me for the rest of my days. It's been an amazing experience, and I've just seen so much personal and professional growth take place in it. And I'm just so thankful, and I can't wait to see where it takes me next.
Definitely. We'll be watching you closely as well. So in that regard, you did mention while you were introducing yourself at the beginning that you yourself are an MUNer as well, and then you did MUN for, I guess, quite a while. So do you believe that activities like the Model UN or other relevant, I guess, youth activism movements for that matter, have a role in helping other young leaders like yourself achieve similar accomplishments? I mean, this could be, at any capacity in terms of engaging with the UN, in terms of taking other, could be advisory roles. So do you think those such activities really contribute, or do they have a role in achieving such accomplishments in general?
Well, indubitably. Well, I'll firstly say that accomplishments and success can look many ways, and so I'm by no means a barometer by which people should measure themselves, or a blueprint that people can assimilate and follow. But my UN journey started with Model UN. I did Model UN profusely in high school. We had a UN club, and then I was selected by my high school to participate in Model UN here in New York. And I did that around 3 or 4 times, and every time, I was able to couple a couple of awards, like best position paper and the best delegate, and I got it. As I said, every time I would return, and about on the 3rd time I came back to present my high school and my country by extension, the Permanent Mission of Jamaica took notice, and they're like, "Would you like to have an internship?" And it was that internship that then turned into the advisoryship at the Youth Envoy, and then when I returned to a full-time post as a policy advisor. So had it not been for Model UN, as you describe it, my accomplishments perhaps would be very different from what you just described and what we just canvassed. And so for those who are looking to achieve some level of again, success with it, but that looks like for you, there's no one way to achieve it, and it doesn't resemble the same thing for everyone. But for those who are looking for some level of fulfillment and some level of self-actualization and aggrandizement, I would definitely say that the Model United Nations programming is a great way to do that. I have seen it transform young people, honestly, from persons who are shy and don't want to be very social to persons who are just now so interpersonal and just changed people and for the better, I would say. These are persons who are not afraid to engage in challenging conversations, who are looking at issues for what they are and working so assiduously to try and find solutions for them. And they're connecting with people all across the globe who are like-minded to try and fix those same challenges that they're noticing and trying to fix too. And so it has just been an absolutely amazing experience, something that has been truly transcendent. And Model UN, I would say, is definitely one of those great generators for having young people not only spur those key discussions that young people are very keen on having, but also to spur and to kind of precipitate change where we want to see it. Not just to have conversations, but to say, how can we actively try and to define some solutions towards these things? And I think Model UN is an absolutely fantastic way to get that done.
Certainly, I agree with you on that, especially about the point that, success doesn't necessarily come in one way, as you said.
Yeah.
And the main reason I actually wanted to focus on this question was because there's usually this, examples like yourself where Model UN directly leads into a different career path doesn't come up very often. So I just wanted to also, bring up the story to let our audience also realize that, yes, it is rare enough, but it is not impossible. It is there,
Yeah.
in addition to all the other soft skill and developmental side of it, which you basically mentioned at the end of your answer. So definitely agree on that. Now, you've been in the system, Nahjae, if I may use this description. You've been a part of it as a youth envoy. You've been a part of your own country's mission, a privileged role. And you're a young person yourself who's also able to look at things from the outside, from your campus, from your own social environments. So being on both roles, how would you evaluate the current level of engagement between UN, the relevant UN bodies, and the youth? It obviously probably isn't the way it used to be 20 years ago or 25 years ago. So on the surface, it looks like there's quite a bit of change going on, but as a person who can see things from both perspectives, how would you evaluate that actually?
Well, thank you for that question. I believe that the UN has undergone great evolution over the past 2 decades. And something that we can definitely note as a positive improvement is something about how our young people are being engaged and the level of that engagement. And so, for example, we see that the United Nations has created a lot of different things. So, since being at the UN, they have now started the Secretary General himself has started a youth advisory group for climate change and advising him directly on climate change issues. We also now have the UN Youth Delegate Program. That was not something that was there a couple of years ago. And of course, various UN departments and agencies, for example, the UN Department for UN DASA, that's the Department of Economic and Social Affairs, they have their own youth programs as well. And of course, all the various UN bodies, both at UN in HQ here in New York and across the world, have youth engagement programs. And those are some things that I think are really great developments and would want to see those continuing to proliferate throughout the UN system. Where I see work needed is perhaps not on the UN side, but on member states. The UN can only do so much. And I think a lot of persons forget that the efficacy of the UN is often a reflection of the member states that it serves. The UN does not direct the world, but rather it is the world and the member states therein that direct the UN. And so though the UN can engage young people through its programs and it can engage young people through a variety of initiatives, if countries themselves don't invite young people to be a part of their delegations, to feature them in the discussions and the negotiations, then whatever the UN is doing it's rather limited. And thankfully, I serve a country that recognizes the importance of young people, and both within the multilateral space and beyond, domestically speaking. And there are other countries out there who shall remain nameless for the purpose of this conversation, but have not formally recognized the value that young people can have, especially to international discourse and to civil society in the world. And so the UN has done great work, and of course, I believe that there's greater work that could be done, and I believe that the creation of the UN Youth Office within the Secretariat will do a lot of the work that requires, or that is required rather, to help to centralize a lot of the processes that are taking place on an ad hoc basis across the UN system. But I believe that greater work can be done by the member states themselves to involve more young people, because the UN can involve them on their programs. But if we have young people actively being a part of those negotiations and those engagements, a lot of those dealings that are not taking place on a high level platform, I believe great work could be done. So the UN has done a lot of work, to answer your question, and there is much further to go, but member states are indispensable towards seeing the change that we want to see.
I think that last part of your answer is just the highlight of this conversation, to be honest, because I remember addressing this pretty much the same question, to be honest, to other former UN officials as well, including a former UN General Assembly president, including another youth advisor to the UN as a part of their country's mission. And the answer always was somewhere around what UN is doing and what could UN do more. But this is the first time that I'm hearing that things could be done on the other side, I guess, of the coin as well, that member states do have a role in this, that they do also have to recognize certain things. So I think that's just a very, very important point that you just made, and I'm really glad that Jamaica at this point is able to make such recognition. So before we conclude, I also wanted to talk a little bit about MUNers Across Borders and our initiative. So do you believe that establishing a day like the World Model UN Day, or these efforts that MUNers Across Borders are taking, actually contribute to these efforts in terms of UN's engagement with the youth, or I guess raising the voice of the youth when it comes to critical issues like climate change and etc.?
Absolutely. I think that, just to reiterate what I said earlier, that the UN, or Model UN rather, is a great generator for youth activism and agency across the world, both within homes and communities and schools and countries, and within the multilateral space as well. And what I see this Model UN Day establishment doing is trifold. One, I see it increasing a lot of engagement with young people. And that is important, because if we have Model UN encouraging conversations and not only just discourse, but saying, how can we be solution oriented and action oriented and fix the problems that plague and bedevil our society, that is something that's great. So just talking about that increased engagement. Two, I also see him doing wonders for increased awareness. Thankfully, Tariq, we're in a space where we know about Model UN and we can recognize its benefits, but we have to recognize that this position and this belief system that we've come to subscribe to is not something that everyone has been exposed to. And so those spaces that don't know much about the United Nations and the potential for change that it has and what it has done for the benefit of our world and how it has advantaged humanity will not recognize the benefit of Model United Nations. And so if we have these conversations in a lot of the spaces where Model UN isn't often touted, or where it's not even recognized that we can do great work in having this kind of dialogue in that space. So it's the increased engagement with young people, and it's also increased awareness. And the last thing I see it also doing is increased engagement with the United Nations. That is important. We can't have Model UN acting autonomously from what the UN is doing. The two must be in sync. There must be some cohesion between what Model UN is doing and the United Nations, because Model UN is a simulation of what's happening with the UN space. And so if we have more Model UNs happening, hopefully at UN facilities, we're encouraging our young people to take note of what takes place at the actual United Nations. Because if you're representing countries, you're of course you would have to be then aware. That would necessitate your awareness of what the discourse is, about what positions are, about what is taking place in the world. And that level of awareness and that level of acuity in terms of knowing what is taking place within the UN system is something that is so beneficial. And you'll see this a lot, especially even with some more learned colleagues in media who don't necessarily know a lot about the UN, and then they cast aspersions and they're like, had you done some research about the United Nations, you'd know, for instance, why kicking Russia out of the Security Council isn't something that is easy said, or easy done as it is said. And so in paying attention to the United Nations and learning what it's about and being in tune and abreast of international politics and what is taking place is something that I believe is very propitious to our young people. And so Model UN, in increasing awareness, increasing engagement, and in having young people being more abreast and apprised of what the United Nations is all about and the work it does and the work that takes place within the UN arena would be so beneficial to the world. And so I am very pleased to be a part of the Model UN bandwagon to support you all in the work that you all do. And it is something that has my unbridled support, and the Permanent Mission of Jamaica is also thrown support behind this as well. And we're just so pleased to see where it takes you next. And I can speak for myself here because I'm not here in any official capacity, but I can definitely say that I am very pleased to see the continued development of the program, and we're working towards establishing it in 2023. So full speed ahead.
Full speed ahead. And we do also really appreciate your presence, your contributions to this initiative. And then just, thank you for being here. Thank you for being there for our audience as well, who are also as a part of this whole project. Nahjae, it was a pleasure having you here. Thanks for your time and thanks for your insights. And we look forward to working with you to the future as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for the invitation, and let's do this again soon.
See you soon. Goodbye.